So you went out and you bought yourself an old truck, and I know you're planning on what color you're going to paint it, what wheels you're putting on it. What you ought to be planning for is replacing your master cylinder first. The reason being is that this is a single reservoir master cylinder. This feeds all four of your brakes. You get a leak anywhere in your lines, you are done for. What we're going to do is we're going to put on a dual master cylinder. This is basically like two master cylinders. You have two reservoirs. What's going to happen is if you get a leak in the front, you still got your rear brakes and vice versa. So safety is a lot more important than your color and your wheels. Let's roll back the tape a little bit and I'll show you how I got this guy out and how I'm going to get it back in. So the first step we're going to do when we're taking out our old master cylinder and putting in our dual master cylinder kit is we have two springs up here. The bottom is for your clutch and the top is for your brakes. We're just going to take that spring off and it'll let our pedal come back and be more comfortable for us to work on. Alright, let me show you a couple of things on the master cylinder before we take it out. The first thing I want to show you is that if you pull back this rubber boot right here, you're seeing master cylinder fluid, brake fluid leak out of there. Another thing I want you to notice is that there is only one line coming out of this, so you leak anywhere, you're doomed. Now, you're going to want to go get one of these little wrenches right here. It's only a couple of bucks. This is a brake line wrench. Brake lines, they get frozen on and they'll get stuck on there. So you're going to want to lube them up a few days before you get working on it. And you're going to leave the master cylinder bolted in while you're trying to take this one piece out. Now, it's not a real big deal if this doesn't come out and you have to cut it out or something like that, because you're not going to be reusing this line anyway. So we'll just take this guy off. It is going to leak your master cylinder fluid, so you might also want to drain it out a day or so before it doesn't leak all over you. But we're just going to rough this out right here and go for it. Once I get this guy off, there's only two bolts that are holding it in, and that's it. We'll go ahead and get those out of there. Then we've got a cotter pin and a little holding pin in. And that is it for your master cylinder. They really come out pretty easy. And going in's not that big of a deal either, because the kit is designed to go in the original holes that are there. So you don't have to do any measuring or bolting or welding or anything like that. Now you might need to trim something here or trim something there, just because of idiosyncrasies in manufacturing back in the 50s, or the bracket that you get. That's pretty expected. So this is going to pop out of here in two shakes. And then I'll show you what our master cylinder looks like and how to set it up before you put it up in here. Make sure you save all your bolts and everything just to be on the safe side. Now on the back there's this plate right here, and this is acting as the nuts, if you will, that these bolts were bolted into. So we're going to save all that just to be on the safe side. You got a cotter pin in here. You're going to need to get your cotter pin out. And then we've got this one little pin right here that's holding that in, and that'll go back in like that. Now we'll get a new one from the kit, but we'll put this all to the side. Now I'll get my master cylinder and the brackets and the proportioning valves. I'll assemble this all. Let me show you how that goes. This is a Corvette master cylinder, and it comes kind of fat on the side right here where it bolts in. The reason I'm pointing that out is if you put it into the bracket right here, you'll notice it doesn't quite line up to the center. So I'm just going to grind a little off here, a little off my bracket, make sure this is centered, then I'll show you what comes next. We're going to set up our master cylinder now. The kit comes with a master cylinder bleeding kit. That is what's known as a bench bleed. This is kind of an important step, because if you get an air pocket in your master cylinder, it'll just tend to get stuck in there and you can bleed your brakes 100 times and you're not going to get a better pedal. So this is a good step to do. Just go ahead and screw these guys on with the hoses, put them on in there, get them to set still. Then we're going to go ahead and pour in our brake fluid. And then we'll just push the brake fluid pedal down, and that will get the air out and the brake fluid in. You'll be able to see it through the hoses here, so watch the air bubbles in the hoses if you can see them. You're going to want to do this nice and slow because it can splash all over you.
Should also mention the fact that brake fluid is very caustic. It will eat your paint. It will ruin your clothes. It tastes terrible, and it hurts when it gets in your eyes. So make sure that if you're working on this and you're getting close to your paint and such, you keep a spray bottle of water around and or some baking soda, because that'll neutralize the acid or what have you that's in here. So I'll go ahead and bleed this guy up. Okay, and when you get it to the point to where you're not seeing any more air bubbles, then you're done. Want to make sure you try to get the fluid not to leak back out. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our cap on it. Now the cap that comes with the kit looks like this, but I strongly recommend to get the remote reservoir master cylinder kit, because climbing up underneath the truck to put on check the brake fluid is just really terrible, and having to pull back your carpet or cut into the floor just isn't practical either. So what we're going to be doing is putting on this remote reservoir kit, and it's going to make life a lot easier for us. After we've got our bench bleed done here, I'm going to go ahead and take these guys off, and we're going to go ahead and put our proportioning valve on. Now, what your proportioning valve does is a couple of different things. If your brake fluid does go low in either the front or back, there is a little switch in right here, and the electric wire goes right to this, and that will tell you if your brake fluid is low. Another thing it does is if you slam on your brakes, it will proportion the amount of pressure so that you don't go into a spin. These will just go ahead and bolt on down like that. I'll tighten them up. Then we'll go ahead and stick this guy on in there.
First thing we're going to do is put in our bracket. Now there's 4 holes in this. All you got to do is line up the 2 that will line up. I'm also going to make sure that my brake line is not in my way, that my speedo cable, my wires for my lights in the back aren't in my way, because when you get this and bolt it in there, it might pinch that stuff and damage it. You're going to put in your shortest bolts. You're going to put on a washer. You're going to put on your lock washer. And then you're going to put on your nut, which actually has a nylon lock on it. So these are kind of being locked down twice, if you will, making sure it's not going anywhere. I'll get this guy on here and tighten it up, and then we'll get our next piece on. Just give me a second here. Now this right here is the rod that is going to be going into your master cylinder. You'll go ahead and screw this piece in, and I like to get it all the way in the bottom. I want to have as much thread in that as possible, so I'll go ahead and I'll bottom it out. Now I'm not going to tighten down this lock nut right here until after I get this spaced out exactly how I like it, and I'll show you that at the end. You're going to get the longest bolt that comes in the kit, and you're going to put this spacer on it right here. Then you're going to go ahead and put this right on the same bracket or the lever that your original brake master cylinder rod attached to. When you attach this though, you do have to make sure that you go through this hole right here, because you're not going to be able to do it after. So right like that, we're going to get a washer on there. Then we're going to get a lock washer on, and then the nut. So we're going to get this guy on, and nice and tight. Now I need to make sure my brake pedal is all the way up, and then I'll get my master cylinder here. I'll take my boot right here and get it on. Okay, I got my boot on. I'm just going to take my shaft right there, and I'm going to make sure that it goes right up in there. Now I will get the only 2 bolts that are left, and bolt that up on in there. Make sure that pedal goes up. So you can do this all by yourself. It's always nice to have a buddy though. Now you see your rod right here? Now we're going to need to adjust this. We don't want a lot of slop in this, but we don't want it totally tight. If you take this and you take all of the slack out of it, what will happen a lot of times is the heat will expand the brake fluid and actually apply your brakes. So we're going to need just a little bit of play down here. And then when we get it where we like it, we'll go ahead and take our lock nut and we'll tighten it down and keep that rod from moving. That's all nice and tight. So now of course you're going to need to do your brake lines, and you're going to need to bleed your brakes and double check everything. Make sure that your speedometer cable's not rubbing up on anything, or any of your electrical cables or anything else that you might have up there. Double check all your nuts and bolts, double check your work, and make sure that you are safe. My name is David Welch. I'm at the Brothers Tech Center every single week, bolting these kits on, so when you get them, they're fitting right. We'll see you out on the road.